Good evening and welcome to another edition of Live with Dr. Wendy. It is time for the headlines with a silver lining, as we like to say, substance seasoned with salt. Hashtag summer vacation. What do you think of when you hear those words? Now, if you are, let's say, over 40, you probably grew up in an era where we weren't tied to our cell phones and devices, and we didn't walk through the day beeping and buzzing and FaceTiming with everybody we ever met. We actually, many of us grew up without any of that. And what we looked forward to in the summertime is ironically what we wish we could do today. Go to the beach, go to barbecues, spend time with friends, meet new friends. It is the kinds of things we took for granted our entire lives, and now we are sorely missing them. But you know who's missing them perhaps even more than us is that genre of person, that age group, if you will, that actually still gets a summer vacation. And yes, I'm talking about our young people. Our young people that actually don't have to work 24/7 like the rest of us, that do get a couple of days off of each year's calendar. They are suffering as well. And we remember that how it was, the end of summer, back to school, the sales, the backpacks, the clothes, all the different types of things that our parents bought us. Well, nowadays they are going back to school, but are they really? Is it the kind of school, quote unquote, that we would be contemplating? Now, of course, we always thought, remember earlier on in the pandemic, well, of course, it's going to be live. It's just going to be the summer that's going to be virtual, and then everybody's going to pour back into the classrooms. But Governor Newsom has given us at least a heads up that that's not going to be what school's going to look like this fall. And that is a bummer for a lot of the kids who were looking forward to seeing their friends, who don't really want a virtual graduation, who want a real graduation and want to walk in a real hall and give a real commencement speech and all the rest of that. But it seems like online learning is at least here to stay in a lot of respects. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about cancel culture. Tonight, we're going to talk about cancel campus. Cancel campus is actually something that is contrary to what some of the pediatricians are saying. I mean, after all, schools are considered to be fundamental to child and adolescent development and well-being. They are saying that lengthy periods of time away from school and the associated interruption of, and this is important, support services, pro-social solutions, often results in social isolation. Now, what does that do for our young people? That in turn can place kids and adolescents at considerable risk of psychological issues, risk of emotional issues. And in fact, let's couple that with the fact that there's a group of US pediatricians who actually believe that children may be less likely to become infection and spread infection. Now, I know there's two sides to every story, and certainly we want to make sure that we keep everybody safe so that we can collectively get back out into the workforce and get back to our regular lives. And it's true, there is just no way to make schools 100% safe. Nobody would ever say that. Nobody could ever say that to a medical certainty. But it really is something that we've been going back and forth on for the last couple of months. And the latest news doesn't seem to be very favorable for the kids. So, I mean, where is this going to end?
Right, Wendy. The American Academy of Pediatrics, or AAP, recently issued a report that recommended that students physically attend in-person school versus continuing remote learning activities for all those reasons you just mentioned, for sure. And then just very recently, this last week, NBC News reached out to 5 top pediatricians from the entire country. I know one was from Stanford. There were several from the East Coast. And they asked them, well, what do you think? Well, they said children, for whatever reason, unlike the flu, where they're usually the first to get a lung infection, with the COVID-19, they are the last or least likely to get a lung infection. So what they said in this report that was done on MSNBC, they asked these pediatricians, 5 of them, selected at random across the country, are you planning to send your children back to school? And every single one of them said, absolutely. I can't wait to get them back in school. And I think it kind of stunned the moderator of that news show. He didn't really know what quite to say about that.
Well, Larry, at the other side of the debate, and I know you've heard the voices that are just as loud, they say, you know what, the sooner we snuff out the virus, the sooner we all go back to work. We don't have to worry about our kids. They get to spend more time with their friends. And to that end, the more that people can take precautions, that means masks, gloves, all the different types of things, sometimes even outdoors, especially if there's no breeze or there's poor circulation, the less people are going to get infected. So what does that mean in terms of, is that a persuasive counter argument, which would basically be, we're going to sacrifice some of our civil liberties now for the greater good to get back out there sooner rather than later? What do you think?
Yeah, I think probably the answer would be send them back to school. And they did a result in, let's see, where was it? Denmark and Finland, where they've been back in school since, I believe, April. And it did not spike the COVID-19 cases at all. There was no change in that. So they had no downside to letting their kids back in. But I would just say yesterday, for those of you who had watched the news conference of Gavin Newsom, he said that of the 58 counties in California, 32 of those are on what he called a watch list. They're worrisome for COVID-19, and they will not reopen. Well, that includes San Diego County. That includes Los Angeles County. Those two counties are the largest population-wise of students in the entire state. So those are not going to be opening. But what was interesting is Orange County voted to reopen for in-person classes. Now, how will this order from Newsom affect that? And there was a reporter that said, well, is this a recommendation or is this something else? He said, this is a mandate.
Well, here's what's interesting about that, Larry, that it's called a mandate. First of all, remember when the governor closed all of our bars and restaurants, at least the indoor edition, we'll call it. We weren't on that watch list then. Remember, you and I did a show on that. And
I certainly do.
And note that notwithstanding our absence on the watch list, our board of supervisors, we ended up being, they closed anyway. And that's fine. That was the assessment that they made. But now that we are on that watch list, people are asking the question that we were all asking back then. Is it a shall, or is it a must, or is it a may, or is it a should? How do people know the difference? Because remember, the governor has sent mixed messaging, at least most of the time he's brought this up. He says he doesn't want to have the law enforcement agencies enforcing these laws, making sure people are wearing masks. Law enforcement agencies across the nation, by the way, are saying, hey, come on, we're not the mask police. We have our own work to do. So the social policing aspect of it, you and I have seen the footage. It's gone viral. People are very angry. Store owners are saying we shouldn't be the ones enforcing the governor's mandate. How do you enforce it? And like you said, if you have a county as big as Orange County that actually is going back into the classrooms, are we going to just watch what happens there and then hope that things change? Or is there something else we can do?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting, I would say, to watch and see, which counties go around that order, perhaps, and actually have the in-person classes. And I wanted to do a little commentary on this, if I could. I call it, if you see something, do something. And this is just my thoughts on this. This is not the station's, nor even my dear co-host, Wendy. But I think, Wendy, what we are actually seeing is a systematic implementation of the fall of our republic and the rise of a global state, or what's been called the New World Order. Now, we've heard that from several presidents, right? Every major event is a step in the ladder to achieve that end, whether it's the pandemic, the Marxist-inspired statue teardowns, or the Antifa and Black Lives Matter instigated riots. COVID is just another rung in the ladder. Now, it's a real virus. I do not dispute that, and it is hurting people. But I think it's an overreaction. And I think they're deliberately mixing all the wordplay, right? I mean, we should stop calling it quarantine. And that's a term for people who are verified sick. This is really house arrest mandated by the state. We should stop calling it, in my opinion, social distancing. There's nothing social about forced isolation. And I just think that we're just in really interesting times. I think they should stop calling it the new normal. That's just a blatant mind control.
It's the new abnormal, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And if this virus is so deadly, why is it that it's less than 0.5% of people who actually contract it pass away?
What do you think about those statistics, Larry? There has been a lot of coverage in the news over the last couple of days about the accuracy of statistics. Where do they get the numbers? Who are they calling? If you have somebody that dies in a motorcycle accident and then happens to also test positive, is that a COVID-related death? I mean, how do we actually determine what those statistics really are?
Right. I think that there's been a lot of proof, and you can, if you watch the news sources and search the internet, where people who've been tested once, they'll come back a week later and they'll be tested again, and that will be counted as 2 people. That's just one example. Are people that may have contracted the virus but died of pancreatic cancer, for example, will be put down as a COVID-19 death.
Well, I'll give you one. George Floyd tested positive for COVID, and we all know that that wasn't what killed him. I mean, talk about an example that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. So those are the kind of questions that I think ties right into your commentary is, if we are going to mandate the things that we are, at the very least, we understand that. We all want to stay safe and keep each other safe, but it sure would be nice to have really accurate statistics, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the important things, and I'll say this to my Democratic and liberal friends and to my white, black, brown, and Asian friends, and I have friends in all of those groups, by the way.
Yes, you do.
That it's time to wake up. It really is. And I think people are getting really antsy about this. First of all, I'm going to give everybody a homework assignment. Now, I don't know if that's ever been done on talk radio.
Well, it is going to be back to school next month.
Make sure you're registered to vote and vote, please.
All right. We will see you on the other end of the break, and that's a good advice to leave you with. You are listening to Live with Dr. Wendy. All right. Welcome back. You are listening to Live with Dr. Wendy. We have been talking about that lost art of summer vacationing. Remember that? Remember what we used to do during the summer? I mean, it was volleyball at the beach. It was making lemonade and just all the kinds of things that we did with each other. I suppose that's what's different. Even when beaches are open, they're open one weekend, they close the next. So too with the prognosis about our school system come this fall. I don't know about your kids, but most kids were very much looking forward to seeing their friends again. Psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, everybody was saying it'll be a good thing for kids to re-socialize themselves, to see each other again, to do the types of things that teens and adolescents and even younger kids are supposed to do. And they were all looking forward to it as well. And parents, weren't we looking forward to having a little bit more time to actually focus on our paying job instead of having so many balls in the air? Well, guess what? We now have kids that are going to be engaged in the kind of virtual learning that they were doing over the summer and at the end of spring. But we have a guest for our second half that is going to give us a little bit of our silver lining, and I'm going to toss it to Larry to introduce him in just a minute. But the important thing to think of is really parents have options. Larry, who do we have with us?
Right. Our guest today, Wendy, is Alex Newman, and he's an education specialist, and he's going to give us more insight into what's really going on in our public schools. Alex is an award-winning international journalist. He's an educator, author, and consultant, in addition to serving as president of the media and information consulting firm Liberty Sentinel Media Incorporated. He's been featured on Drudge, Breitbart, Fox News, and many other outlets, and his writing has been published in major newspapers all across America. And he has so many more credentials, but in interest of time, I'm just going to introduce him right now. So welcome to the program, Alex. Great. And so we wanted to get your opinion, Alex. Since you're an education expert, what are your thoughts on the fact that schools, colleges, and universities are basically closed to in-person attendance this coming fall?
Alex, I was just going to ask you about that. Given the fact that we don't have the kind of control that we wish we did when our kids go off to school somewhere, almost no matter where they go. I mean, we've heard stories from all different types of schools of the things that are being taught in parts of the curriculum. Is there a happy medium? In other words, is there a way that because parents are there, if kids are being, let's not say homeschooled because it's remote schooled by a district somewhere, do they at least have an opportunity to intervene, to streamline, to filter, if you will, some of what the kids are learning?
Yeah, that's interesting, Alex, because they're talking about defunding the police, and sometimes just the thought, I see these huge campuses, huge, like the University of California. They're like cities within themselves. They're so large. Should we defund the colleges and universities if people are going to learn from home and it's just as good? I mean, just an idea. But I just wonder how this is all going to turn out in the end. And I do, again, worry about the kids not being able to interact with one another.
Well,
And
with
that's the
one
case of,
another is a huge point, like Larry was saying, because if there are chat rooms where they are hanging out with adults, that's the problem. And we worry about that now that everybody's online, Alex, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I look at all these meetup groups that are out there. There is no verifying age. There's not even a question. You know, like if you go try to buy alcohol online, it says you have to be 21 to enter the site. Yeah, right. That's regulated. But there's not even that question on some of these sites where there are there's social events. Everybody's invited. Come one, come all. There's no policing of it. We worry that that type of thing is happening in our schools, don't we?
right. What could parents do? I mean, they've got the kids home now. If they wanted to protect their kids, and we all do want to protect our kids, what should we do at this opportunity time of,
That's right. Well, there's two things, Alex. The first thing is there's lots of parents that have to go, they have to work themselves. They can't really, supervise like they would like to. And then the second thing is I know there are also lots of opportunities for the kids to socialize virtually within some of these great private school programs. We're going to have to leave it there. But Alex, if people want to find out more about you and your work, how can they reach you?
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. So there you have it. That is some really good suggestions for how we're going to envision what school is going to look like in the fall. But let's just leave it with the silver lining of, we have a little bit of summer vacation left, and obviously I'll put that in quotes, but let's think about how we can at least enjoy the fact that we do get to be with our families. We do get to be with our kids. We do have backyards, some of us, and if we don't, we can at least go outside. Let's enjoy the rest of our summers, and let's all pray for that vaccine that's supposed to be here in the fall. Boy, wouldn't that open all the schools up right away. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So I hope we're going to leave you with that as a little bit of a silver lining. We hope to have you join us next week. No doubt there will be plenty to talk about between now and then. And we're, as always, going to give you news you can use. And we want to say that our prayers are with you this week. God forbid you or somebody has been touched by the virus. We want to say that you're always in our prayers, and we want to make sure that even though we are almost at the end of the summer vacation, that you please do enjoy almost the rest of it. So thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. You are listening to Live with Dr. Wendy. Have a great one.